So, welcome everybody again to the Whisky Circus. Doing things a little bit different this week. We're going to go into a debate style and talk about English whiskey and how it's performing and where we need to hopefully go with it. And I've got two pretty exciting guests on today. So we've got Matt, who's everybody knows as the Dramble. Not only does he run one of the, in my opinion, premier whiskey blogs, he's also working for Bimber now, and I'll let him tell us a little bit more about it in a minute. And we've got the lady of whiskey, Amy Stetton, so we're going to really build her up, so she's got a lot to live up to.
It's Sunday, you've got to be gentle.
Yeah, one of the nicest females that I've met in the whiskey community. An extremely, what's the word? Driven business lady, I would say. Not only does she run quite a successful whiskey pub, is it pub, bar, I suppose is the better word.
Bar club.
Yeah, which obviously also runs a whiskey club within that, and some whiskey festivals, which I've had the pleasure of attending both as a punter and on the stands. And I believe you've also got a new exciting little project coming up. So I'm going to hand over to you, Amy, because obviously ladies first. If you can give us a little bit more detail on yourself and what's coming up and things like that.
Hi everyone, you've really massively built me up there, Soren. I'm not sure how I'm good. I think I've met quite a few of you, or no, I'm just like looking at all your names, and there's a few that I recognise. So I don't even know where to start really. So 10 years. So my club has been going for nearly 10 years now. So I started it in 2011. So I'm just starting to plot 10-year anniversary things for next year, so that's quite exciting. So it started in a kind of quite a sort of a typical club type of thing, and then 2 years ago, so Burns Night obviously had to be Burns Night. I opened the club as a space, so we still call it the Birmingham Whisky Club. That may or may not change in the future. The club will always be there. But as Soren said, I've run festivals, so I do the Whiskey Brum. So we're just looking at our near 10th year for that as well. And then I started Whiskey Bristol a couple of years ago, but we aren't doing that this year. We weren't going to do it anyway, actually, just to concentrate on Birmingham. But then obviously things happened, so we were quite glad about that because it was in September. So at the moment, I call the bar the sort of the most landlocked bar in the UK, which I think it is, and my interest in English whiskey is kind of, we are in the centre of England, so in the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham, and we just started, so the Cotswolds are our closest distillery, followed very closely by the guys up at Forest and White Peak, Chase, when they start actually talking about the fact that they have whiskey casks lying down, which they don't seem to want to do at the moment. And we're really kind of excited about having a really big English whiskey selection. And at the moment, it just seems to be kind of going, fairly crazy. So I've done a little bit of some project work around English whiskey. And then I got to meet Richard, who Soren just mentioned, at the London Whisky Club. And I just said, I thought there's no point in all these different people doing different projects. So I wouldn't say we joined forces. I've joined him and his kind of idea on what he wants to do with English Whisky Society. So we're working on a virtual festival at the moment, which will be happening in mid-October. And then hopefully, all being well, we're going to go into a physical festival. So there's quite a few other people around the UK who also have been doing bits and bobs in English whiskey, and we're all basically just joining together. And then my project is that I'm going to start bottling some whiskey, but I've had to push that back till next year now. So that is a very abridged version of what I do.
Yeah, very, very compressed, because I know you do a hell of a lot more than that, basically. But I mean, the interesting thing for me, obviously, is the progression you've kind of made, obviously, starting with a whiskey club, going into the festivals, and then actually opening a bar to compress all the everything together. So, I mean, how is the bar going? Obviously, it must be getting hits at the moment. So, are you now open again?
Yeah, we're open. So obviously we had to close. When was it? Like late March, and we just opened a couple of weeks ago. So this weekend's been really good. Actually, we had a really late night last night. But yeah, it's not great if I'm being honest, because we're a very events-led space as well. So we do lots of stuff with brands, lots of tasting events. We do lots of food matchings, things like that. So yeah, it is what it is. We were really busy yesterday. It's like the whole world and his wife are out, which is brilliant. But we're just going to see how it goes. We're a bit sort of resigned. So I have a bar manager, and then I have somebody who does events for me as well. So we're going forward with the festival next year. I don't know what's really going to happen with the festival market later this year. I've been hearing a few rumblings, but ours is going ahead in March as usual. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think with the festivals, I mean, obviously speaking from the English whiskey side, we've kind of looking at it thinking we're not going to get anything in this year. I know talking to some other ambassadors that, you know, they're kind of down the same line that we've just written this year off. I mean, even looking at one in January of next year, you know, even that's still at the moment touch and go whether it'll go ahead. So it is a depressing time for those of us who want to get out there, but you can kind of understand it as well, because it could become a lot worse.
Yeah, and we're just sort of mindful of that. So we're trying to kind of pivot, I guess is the business word I would use, our offering. We're going to be launching a new virtual membership, which is quite exciting, and we're not going to stop doing the virtual events. We're just going to make them better. So we're going to just start having, I think, like a blended offering. So you don't have to be a member to come to the bar, but there are memberships available, and now we're just going to launch another one.
And sort of talking, you mentioned it briefly there with the English Whisky Society Festival, which I think is that the 16th of October.
It is, yeah. We've not quite finalising a few details, and then it's going to go.
I know we've committed to it.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, I'm saying we've committed to it. I've been told about it.
You have.
Yeah. But yeah, I know, you know, the package we're looking at putting together is quite exciting. So.
Yeah, and I think there's there are quite a few virtual festivals, and we're really mindful of that because everyone's kind of flipped their offering online. And I was involved in Somerton, which was fantastic, and really, really well run. And I know that I think there was I wasn't involved in the latest one, but so yeah, we're sort of trying to slot in a way that isn't exactly the same as Somerton, and it will be run more of a kind of session. You know, you can buy a pack for a particular session, and we have enough packs for a certain amount of people, or you can just buy a ticket and just listen to the chats. You don't have to kind of commit to any whiskey. So
yeah, I think that's sort of the downside to some of the festivals that I'm seeing, and I do understand it, but where they're obviously putting the tasting packs out, but you have to pay to be able to even view it. And it would be nice to kind of be able to view them as a community and offer the fact of there is a pack for people that want to do the tasting as well.
But a lot of people just want to dial in. I've just noticed the comments about the Whisky Exchange. I've heard quite a few brands have pulled out. Actually, I was talking to one of the big Scottish ones the other day, and they were on a big call. So I don't know, but I've got a sneaking suspicion that might also go.
I'll be surprised if it does go ahead in person. I know there's a lot of backup, you know, with the virtual side, which I kind of think that'll be the way it will have to go. I just don't see being able to happen. So
no, I mean I know people, you know, they're really excited about going. Have bought tickets, so I don't know. I feel sorry for the Whisky Exchange at the moment. They seem to. I don't know, just...
I think the fact that they've pushed it to be very adamant it's going to go ahead. It's one of those, I think there should have been a fair bit more caution behind it. I know the team are obviously wanting it to go ahead. We all want it to go ahead, but, you know, I think from the discussions that I've had with other ambassadors and things like that, the people don't want to attend it in the sense of, they're worried for their own health, never mind such a large gathering of however many people within one tight space. So I don't see it going ahead in person. I really don't. I mean, we're only talking 2 months away, and we're already seeing numbers rise. So it's.
I know. Well,
yeah.
Andy's here, isn't he, from Manchester? So I don't know what's. Hello.
Yeah, he's on lockdown now. So yeah, but I think that was more from everybody else asking for him to be locked down rather than anything else.
It's all your fault.
Yeah, but
yeah, it's a really sad time, and it's difficult because festivals, talking in a really specific business way, are lucrative, and it's one of the reasons that my business has been able to survive over the years as a business. I did freelance work for a few years, but then I went, it's been my full-time job for a long time, and partly due to the money that comes in from the festival. So with the Whisky Exchange, and I know the prices that they charge, it's probably a pretty big, big thing for them, and especially because the bar industry is just not buying anything really at the minute.
I know, sort of talking to and listening to what some of the online shops are saying and things like that. I mean, they've had a bit of an increase with sales early on, where people were buying the more run-of-the-mill type whiskies off the online. Whether that's carried on or not, I don't know. But when you've got a specialist that's pushing a lot of high-end whiskies and things like that, you do kind of wonder how hard it has hit them.
I think with retail, I was talking to a friend of mine is the manager of the whiskey shop in Birmingham, and he was in the bar last night, and he was saying had one of their best days. The last couple of months have been some of their best months, even over Christmas sales. So they're doing crazy stuff, but it is as you said, it's the sort of run of the mill stuff. So but yeah, I've heard of, because one of the reasons, it's all this stuff that sort of happens in the back. Like when we first locked down, everyone was just you couldn't really do anything, so it was just stressful, and no one really knew what the hell was going on. And then we started to try and buy miniature bottles, and then we were finding that there were 2-month waits on boxes and bottles and caps, and then we had to get all these things. And then people are like, oh, have you got your compound license? It's what the hell is a compound license? So it's all this licensing stuff that now is right, got a compound license, right, found a box supplier, and that's 2 months in. So if you were, so a friend of mine runs a wine shop, a really successful wine shop called Loki in Birmingham, and he had everything set up. So he has done the best business probably of his life, because he had delivery set up already, and we had nothing. So we had to kind of deal with this really stressful situation and then go, oh right, okay, now we're a delivery service. Okay, can you actually send little minis through the post? Where can you get them from? And we had to just looking at the amount of crap that we bought, because we were just panic buying, the amount of bottles. If anyone wants any mini bottles, I think I've bought them all in the end. But it was just because you felt like if you didn't do something, people would sort of forget you as well. So you had that stress, and then the stress of not, I know way too much about cardboard boxes now and postage. It's really quite boring. But we just had to do the best we can. And then obviously, don't tell the SWA, we were obviously bottling in the bar in Birmingham, so we were taking and then you're
recorded,
right,
so.
I'm rebottling, so I shouldn't have been doing that either. So no compound license, no professional bottler. We were just got to make some money, we've got to, so we were pulling all the kind of the good stuff off the shelves and just bottling up as flights that we kind of taped, did we had to buy a heat gun and just put a little tape around the top and just sell them, because we just didn't really have a choice. And obviously when it's whiskey you have to do, and cocktails as well, you to sell cocktails not in your bar, so packing them up and sending them out, you need this extra license, because it's all, you're mixing spirits, and you're mixing spirits with other things. So if you're mixing spirits with water, fine, but if you're mixing spirits with I don't know, anything else, you then need another license to sell, even though we already have an off license. So the details, and we just made a decision. We were like, the Scotch Whisky Association aren't going to come and knock on our door in Birmingham, hopefully. So then now we're using the guys at the drum team. So Chris is a good friend of mine, and so we've started, but that process took another 2 months. So we literally just took delivery of all our boxes. So we sent up all the boxes to Scotland. He made some nice branding, and he sent them back. So we've had like this 3-month kind of interim of just selling whatever with whatever bottles we could just to get something in. And then we've got the sort of professional stuff. So it's taken us that long, you know.
Yeah. So obviously, just to clarify, you did everything legally and nothing.
Oh, of course, yes. This conversation never happened. Oh, and it's being recorded. Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. So we appreciate the Dram team did it all for you in the end.
Yeah, absolutely, from day one. Yeah. They were there for us.
Yeah, but no, I mean that's the interesting thing, because I know we spoke, and I can't for the life of me think which conversation it was, about the law behind rebottling bottles of Scotch whiskey, and it's a minefield.
It is a minefield, and it's not clear. You know, we were looking through, fine combing the legislations that they have online, and I'm still, the wording is not specific.
Yeah.
But I spoke to Chris actually, and he lives in Bristol but has this bottling company in Scotland, and he was just like, you technically shouldn't, but he thought it would be unlikely that anyone would come and tell me off. I've already just get a slap wrist and told not to do it again. Yeah.
But what we'll do now is I'll bring Matt in, because I know he's patiently sat there, and sort of we'll come back to a general chat in a bit. But just want to bring Matt in now and sort of talk about. I think we'll go down the line with you, Matt, of kind of bringing in the blogger side as much as anything, and obviously how that led to working for Bimber, if we can.
Oh, sure. Okay, hi guys. Good to be here. Hope everyone is well. Way back when I went to cookery school, and that was going to be a thing, and then I prolapsed my lumbar spine, and that was the end of that. Can't stand up all day. I then moved into PR, because obviously when you're not cooking, PR is the most obvious thing to do. I don't know. I spent 10 years doing mechanical engineering PR. I then spent roughly 12 years in science PR. And now for the past year, I've been doing whiskey PR, working for Bimber. So my whiskey journey in terms of where I started, I don't know, 20 years ago, traveling with work, drinking on planes, getting really bored of gin and tonics, particularly bad gin and tonics on aeroplanes. So found myself some Dewar's white label, had that with ginger, quite liked it. I tried it without the ginger, didn't like it. But the ginger was enough to make me think, right, well, let's explore some whiskey. So fast forward to about, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, and I moved out to Northwest London, even further out than I am now, and opened up a whiskey club, which normally runs once a month, although at the moment kind of is looking like doing a socially distanced outside thing, end of August, maybe not, who knows, but we haven't had a club meeting since February. But out of that, I remember one of my club members saying, well, you're doing all this whiskey stuff. Why don't you start a website about it? And I said, well, why? Why would I want to do that? And they said, because you spend all your time writing. So why not combine writing with your passion and create a website? So I said, well, that's fine. But, my HTML, my web design is nothing. And at that point, one of my sort of particularly geeky club members said, I do websites, and offered to effectively build it. So that's Danny. He built the website. I write the website. I think we've been going about 4 years now. It feels longer, but it is only about 4 years of pushing it out there. The website has dramatically changed since when I first started. When I first started, I was just sort of writing reviews and just saying, hi, here's a whiskey, and here's what I think about it. Have some nice tasting notes. Here's a score. And that's all very well and good, but actually I decided that I was going to use it. It's my site. I can do what I like. I was going to use it to say something. And so I don't post as much as I used to. I probably only post twice a week nowadays, but all of the time spent on that website is in writing the introduction, which has been known as the preamble. And yeah, it's just a space where I still believe that long form content has a place in society. I think a lot of people are consuming short form content, either via Twitter or via YouTube, but I still think that there is a bastion for long form content, and I like to defend it. And yeah, it's still something that I love to do, getting up at 6 in the morning and writing some stuff. I just don't get as much time to do it as I used to, mainly because I'm now working 2 jobs. I'm working my full-time job, which is in science PR, and then I'm working part-time for Bimba, which takes up virtually all my other time. So I'm heading up their PR, their marketing, all of their community stuff. But I'm also increasingly getting involved in their inventory management and all of the cask selection. So lots of different fingers in lots of different pies. Let's see. I feel that the next 6 to 12 months, the world's going to change quite a lot. I'm hoping that this will be the year that actually I can say, you know what, I've done this science PR lark for 12 years. Let's move completely into the whiskey world and not just have it as something that you're doing as an extra, but have it as a full-time thing.
Yeah, and I think what resonates with me is something you just said there, that you're obviously part-time, which is slightly more involved than what I am, because I'm kind of like freelance stroke the festival side. So obviously my part with the English Whiskey Company is very quiet at the moment, but it's amazing just being part-time how much time that still takes.
Yeah. And it sort of, it started off, and I mean, effectively, I didn't actually make the link, but I'll make the link. I went along with Somerton Club and Top Whiskies. They invited me to, I hate the name, an influencer event. I can't stand influencing. The moment you say you're an influencer, you aren't. But anyway, we went along, and it was at Bimba, and it was my introduction to my local distillery. They're only 20 minutes away from me here. And I got chatting with Darius, and at the time Farid. He was working for us then, and they said, well, you know, the one thing we're missing is marketing and PR. And I said, well, I'm here. And then initially they said, well, can you help us find someone? And so they sent a few proposals from agencies my way, and they were horrific. I mean, they were sort of charging, you know, £6,000–7,000 a month for not a lot. And it just got to the point where they said, what do you think? And I said, well, you know what I think. I said, I'll do it for you. I'll do this, and I won't charge you £6,000–7,000. Jesus, that's crazy. And so that's sort of how the link of writing things to being invited to things to then taking my skill set, my day skill set, and then transferring that into the passion. And that's how that came along. But it takes a lot of work, particularly when you've done a full day of doing normal stuff, Bimba stuff, and then not quite Gary, that would be amazing. Normal stuff and Bimba stuff, and then your distillery manager calls you up at 8 in the evening because he wants to have a strategy chat.
Yeah, I get that totally. But yeah, I think you highlighted something there as well, that as a very amateurish blogger, I hate being called an influencer, because I think you're not trying to influence people. To me, we're just trying to give an opinion, and that opinion should not really influence anybody's decision other than maybe just pique a little bit of interest.
Yeah, no, totally agree, Simon. Because for me, if I managed to influence everyone that read my site and they all agreed with me, there'd be nothing to debate anymore.
No,
and that would be really boring. So why would I want to be an influencer? I actually like people to disagree with me. I want to anti-influence them, because then it makes more things interesting to write about. Yeah. I mean, there's always, you know, at the moment, was it hashtag Cast Strength Crusade? I might have a pop at that in the next couple of weeks. I don't want everyone to agree with me, because that makes the world a really boring place.
Exactly, and I think you coming from a PR side, I mean, we've seen how PR can really make a brand, but it can also kind of destroy a brand as well. You know, it's something you've got to get right.
Sure. And yeah, sometimes, as Rich has pointed out, sometimes you do earn your money. Particularly, you know, when you work with people like Selfridges, it gets quite difficult. And and then you're like, wow, I should have asked for more money than this. Life is too short.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, and sort of with the PR side for Bimba, and talking about the whiskey from Bimber as well, that I just don't see that they can do anything wrong at the moment. Everything is just falling very nicely for you.
Yes and no. So for me, and I was on the Southport Whiskey Festival, and someone said, "Well, what's the success of Bimber?" And so I jokingly said, "Well, it's amazing marketing and PR, of course." And I was only half joking, because I think you need various things. You do need good marketing and PR. You need active comms. You need brand and design that appeals to people. You need a story that people find interesting. You need friendly faces, but you also need bloody good liquid, i.e. good distillate, good cask management. In fact, that's the most important thing. So that's what, in my opinion, everything that Bimber falls on, in that, you know, we can build a brand, we can have a conversation as much as we like, but if people get all hyped up for it and then they taste it and go, well, that's not very good, it all falls to pieces. So for me, the quality of the spirit, the quality of the distillate, the casks, and the actual way that we are making whiskey, that's the most important thing.
Yeah. But I mean, my opinion in a sense is that if you've got a successful PR, everybody knows about the product without necessarily talking about the PR. If the PR is bad, you talk about the PR, you're not talking about the spirit anymore. And that's what I kind of see with Bimber, that yes, the liquid's speaking for itself, because we've most of us on here have tried it, and people are rushing out to buy it, and that tells its own story. But it's not necessarily buying it because of the PR. We all know about Bimber, but we know about it from, yes, the PR, but it's kind of like a quiet PR that's successful, if that makes sense.
I don't know if anyone's ever told me I'm quiet, but
no, I don't mean it quiet, but I mean, we're not talking about the PR as a PR thing. We're talking about Bimber as a whole rather than just the PR.
Of course.
Yeah.
And indeed,
the Facebook group of Bimber has been really, really successful. And I think I come from a marketing background, and the best thing that can happen to a brand is that you release it into the world and you have a extremely strong group of people. And Bimber, I think, because there's like Cotswolds is fantastic liquid, it doesn't have the following that Bimber doesn't. That Bimber does, sorry. And I don't quite know. There's something that has captured people's imagination, and there are some amazing liquids out there, and they just do not have the fanfare, I suppose, that Bimber does. And there's not, we're talking about the same kind of products. They have amazing cask management. They have a really amazing origin story. But there's something about Bimber, and I think it's a lot to do with releasing it into the world. It's the bloody Facebook group, whether you like it or not. It's I'm in it, and I've had to silence it for quite a while, especially during Selfridges. Yeah. And I tell you now, I have never gone. I left my bar at 2:00 in the afternoon, got on the tram to go to Selfridges, and I had to tell the poor girl behind the counter that I think at that point, Lucas was in the loading bay unloading the Bimber, and she still wouldn't give me one. And I got on the list, and I have never ever done that before. And that caused me to panic. And I collect stuff to go in the bar. I don't collect for myself.
Yeah.
But there was something there that caused me to panic and get on a tram midday.
Yeah. My opinion of Bimber at the moment is, when you compare it to the other English whiskies that are out there, it's kind of like a whiskey on its own. It's big, it's bold, and there is a massive amount of flavour for such a young whiskey. You look at the other distilleries, sort of like, obviously, the English Whiskey Company, Cotswolds, and these are the ones that I've tasted, and it's a more delicate flavour. So at the moment, I think people are buying these big, bold, heavy flavoured whiskies, and Bimber just sits in there for me.
I disagree. I don't think that.
Disagree?
Yeah, of course I do.
Brilliant. Go on, here we go.
Yeah, you're going to have me disagreeing with you.
Yeah. Go on.
I don't know. Some of Cotswolds. I'm a real Cotswolds fangirl. Yeah. As you, I was there yesterday, but because it's my nearest one. But I think it's to do with people. There's a Cotswolds devotees, I think, as well. I mean, that there's not the kind of craziness, the crazy discussion, the kind of the people getting really, really cross at poor Matt and whoever else is moderating the Facebook page. It's something over and above what the liquid is. And yes, there are, obviously it's a big and bold whiskey, but you know, there are some Cotswold expressions, there are Lakes expressions that are big, bold whiskies, I would say. It's something over and above what the actual taste is. And that
I don't think we disagree on that. I totally agree with you on that. And when I say it's, I'm talking of like a distillery as a whole, where I personally think that Bimber is probably the heavier liquid of all the English whiskies that are out there that I've tasted. It's very, very full bodied, and it's in your face almost, whereas the others, they're kind of more approachable, if that makes a sense, that you know, you get to know them, you get to understand them. Bimber is kind of like that, impacts instantly.
Interesting you say it's the heaviest, because our spirit cut is the tightest. It's the narrowest of all of them. So yeah, for me, it's not necessarily the weight of the spirit. It's taking a tight spirit cut and then applying it to some really active casks. So that for me, what you're talking about there is not spirit weight, you know, like Dao Yuan or Mort Lac. What you're talking about is interaction. So yes, and we do get an incredible amount of interaction with a really tight spirit cut and some really active casks. And that's what gives you that punchy, big, fat flavor within 3 years. But yeah, it's not the weight of the spirit, it's the forcefulness of the interaction.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, when I say heavy, I'm obviously not talking of weight, you know, I'm talking about it's just there. It's an instant flavor impact. And you know, everything that I've tried from Bimber, it's just hit the spot. You know, so far I haven't had one where you kind of sit back and think, you know, that's not as good as what I've had before. It just all seems to be an instant impact for me.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying. I mean, there are certainly some casks in there that I'll tell you they aren't as good, and we just won't release them. We won't even blend them. You know, there's one cask in there that I'm pretty convinced that the previous thing that was in it was something like Jägermeister or Underberg or something like that. It's unbelievably herbal. Despite allegedly being an ex-bourbon cask. So I think it was ex-bourbon, herbal liqueur came over to us. And in my opinion, it's foul. And so the reason why we think that you're always going to say, I like this Bimber, I like that Bimber, is because we're completely finicky about what we're going to release. We have tipped casks away, literally tipped them away. And a lot of distilleries won't do that. They'll say, right, well, you know, you look at this cask and this is worth X amount of money. And either they'll just release it anyway, they'll try and finish it, or they'll try and blend it away. And we don't do that. It's just not our ethos. I mean, that all stems back, if you look at our distillation, we don't even redistill heads. You know, that is inherently wasteful to not be doing that. But all of these things, all of these steps that we take go to create the profile that you're identifying as, that's a Bimber whiskey. It's high impact, young age. And it's all about those things of not, I'm going to say not cutting corners and not sticking things out that don't necessarily fit in with that. But yeah, there's certainly casks. I've got another price, about another 50 to go through this week. So I'm probably going to fall over by Friday. There's a few in there that just aren't good enough. Some will come through waiting. Some of them, they're just a bit odd, and we won't release them.
Yeah, and I think that's the way that a lot of distilleries just haven't gone. You know, that they've had some substandard casks that have, you know, a lot of them are very able to blend them or vat them into other releases, whereas, you know, a lot of what you're doing so far is single casks and things like that, or very small batches. So it's going to show up a lot more if you put something more out.
Yeah. So, I mean, effectively what I'm quietly hoping for is that as my role expands and I take on more of the inventory management, and also as we get more casks, you know, we've just laid down some rum casks, there's some wine casks. You've probably seen me messing around with my other passion, which is beer. So we've just taken some casks over, which are going to be filled with imperial stout. So I would hope that in the next 12 to 18 months, all being well, Bimber would have a sufficient palette, broadness, that then we'll be able to start actually playing with it in terms of blending it, in terms of creating expressions that, you know, it's not just the same cask vatted times 4 times 8 times 20. It's not a single cask. It's actually something which is bringing those different layers of flavor together. And that's really challenging for a young distillery, because you do have to put out quite a lot of product to make money. I mean, the margins on £65 a bottle are not a lot.
No, exactly. And sort of jumping over to Amy with this one, with the bottling service that's coming up, are you looking to try and bottle a lot of English whiskies then, or is it just going to be a general whiskey portfolio?
With the whiskey,
with the bottling,
do you know what? I did think about that to start with, but I think that would just be too narrow. So with my many hats, I'm gonna do about 55 million more things. So the club will have its own club bottlings, because I've just, for some bizarre reason, I've never done that before. Don't quite know why now. So I'm working hopefully with Seb at Artful Dodger to do some club specific bottlings. And then other brands like, you know, the Glenallachys of the world and stuff to do club branded stuff. And then I'm launching a new business as well. So I won't say the name of it because I haven't actually, it's not quite registered yet. So
yeah, keep it quiet.
Well, I had to go all grown up and, you know, do IP registration and all that kind of nonsense. And it takes 6 months so I've done all the URLs, I've got, you know, website and blah, 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 but they came back out like, we'll let you know in 6 months whether it's been successful. It's like, oh, great, okay. So that's one of the reasons why I've pushed it back. So I don't want to start kind of designing labels and casks, you know, getting casks and stuff like that, and then for them to say, oh, you've got to change the name. So I'm waiting till the end of the year. But I did buy a cask. So the cask buying is a whole other layer of the whiskey industry that I just hadn't been privy to, and the amount of brokers who act for the brokers and brokers who act for individuals, and then you have to really start kind of digging and getting to understand who's doing what. And then there's the people who just are selling to individuals who are just want an investment, a long-term investment, and you have to be quite careful because who did I speak to? It was, I think Seb actually, I think everyone will know Seb, won't they? Yeah. So he's brilliant, and he's sort of, we're kind of have similar business models, but we're both doing it the other way around. So he's now opening a whiskey bar in Brighton, which is fantastic. So he's going through some licensing issues. So we had a great chat, and he was just sort of giving me the lowdown on cask buying and stuff. And people are seeing cask investment now how they started seeing whiskey investment about 5 years ago. So it's everybody, and I think anyone who's on Facebook will have seen those sponsored ads that are just doing the rounds. And there are some I've been warned off a few companies who just seem to be artificially inflating casks to the sort of individual investment market. So I'm just being a bit cautious, but there will be a bottling company coming down the line. But one of the reasons that I won't just do English, I will do English at some point, is because of the English Whisky Society. So Richard, one of his key aims, so we're doing the festival, which will be in October. In the background, so he's working full time. He's got 2 very little kids as well, who actually came on the Cotswolds tour with us yesterday, which was very nice. Slightly alarming at some points. But he wants to bottle. That's his kind of plan for the society. So he's gonna. He would like to at some point work. You know, have it pay him a salary. Whether it can be a full-time salary or not, we don't know yet. But he wants to buy English whiskey casks to bottle for the society. So the idea is that you can become a member of the English Whisky Society and you'll have access to English whiskey bottlings. So although there's no point in me kind of duplicating that kind of business model, and it's easier at the minute to go through. Brokers don't have a lot of English whiskey stuff right now. Whether that will come through, I don't know, in a few years, but it's still just easy to get Scotch casks, actually. Well, from the little I know about the whiskey cask market, that's how it seems.
Yeah, I think it's always going to probably be easier to get the Scotch because obviously it's such a larger scale anyway, and the majority of the English distilleries are still very, very young. So, you know, they haven't really got the stocks to be selling too much. But I mean, that's interesting, Matt. As Bimber, are you selling many casks out, or are you trying to hold them all for yourselves?
Good question. We have not done any casks for independent bottlers yet. We are still chatting to them. And it's a tough one because actually a lot of them don't just want a cask that's ready to go. You know, they don't just want an ex-bourbon barrel that they can bottle. They want a deal for new make fills because they are, you know, they're canny people and they recognize that the money in whiskey is in new make fills that you sit on, and then you bottle them, you play with them, you store them, and that's where all the profit is. So all the deals that are coming to us from independents are really around, well, how many casks can you fill a year? And that's really tricky for us because, you know, we're filling a cask a day tops. So there's not a lot to go around. We have done, as you've seen, quite a few single casks, a few for whiskey clubs, for shops. We will keep on doing that. And it's very much an upcoming conversation to really look at our inventory management for 2021 and say, well, how many have we got available? What can we do? And then kind of who should get it? Because there's a few people who just turn up at the door and it's like, we don't know you. And they're like, can I buy some whiskey casks? And the answer is no. And it's, you know, if we had millions of them, then it'd be like, sure, pay us the money, have our whiskey. But there's two things there. There's one, not having enough of it. And two, we just want to be really happy with whoever buys it. They're either going to work with us to bottle it and put it out there, or they're going to do a bloody good job in ensuring that our whiskey gets a good showing when it is put out there. Because you can say what you like. If an independent bottler puts out a bottle of distillery X, people still make assumptions about that distillery, even if it was purchased. So yeah, we're just being quite careful at the moment. We're looking to maximize it as much as possible, but we're just so small that it is difficult.
Yeah. Matt, you get brokers getting in touch and stuff, you know, the big brokers, are they coming to you, or is it more kind of individual cask investors?
It's independent bottlers mainly at the moment rather than brokerages.
Yeah, with that pesky boutique whiskey company one.
We have spoken to boutique.
I think everybody has, yeah. I mean, the interesting thing there then, so going back to yourselves as a distillery, like we say, you know, a lot of what you've released so far have been single casks. How long are we going to have to wait before we see some sort of core range bottling that's...
Sure. So yeah, Jamie's just asked when the first peated Bimber will come out, and so I'll deal with that now. 2 weeks, something like that. 2 weeks time. Peated cask, so not peated barley, but yeah, that is imminent. So I've been spending the week writing the materials for that. Yeah, so core range is difficult because effectively what you're saying at that point is you need to be able to guarantee that no matter how many people buy that bottle, you've got enough stock to keep making that bottle. And we were actually, when we released the first last year, we had intended to release, I think they were going to call it Bimber Signature when I joined, and I said, that's rubbish, we're not calling it that, that's just so... I went on Whiskey Base, typed in signature, and I think it produced 287 results. I said, no, we're going to come up with something more unique. But actually, it's moved on since then in that I think our you know, range needs to be more than just an ex-bourbon cask. I would personally like to see it some type of combination of ex-bourbon and sherry, so something a bit more interesting to define it out as not being a small batch product and not being a single cask. So then it's a case of, well, when can we get to the point where we have enough stock to do that? And about 6 months ago, I could have made that prediction. But now it seems that we put anything out and everyone sucked it up in under 6 minutes, which is a nice problem to have, right? Let's be honest, that's great, it's all gone. But that really doesn't help me in terms of saying, right, well, we should be able to produce this number of a core range expression at that point. It's virtually impossible to calculate because where is that point that people are not going to buy everything and that you can come to the distillery and say, yep, this is our standard bottling and it's always here. And I don't think we're there yet. I think this will be a conversation that we'll have probably in 6 months' time at the end of the year, looking into 2021. It is absolutely our intention to have a fixed product. But if people keep buying out everything in minutes, that makes that really, really difficult to work out what that product is.
I mean, that is the interesting thing, that, like you say, it does sell out so quick, which just shows how popular it is. But so if in the sense that we're not looking at an imminent core range, is there any plans to sort of do small batch? So there are a large number of bottles available.
Exactly. So yeah, in a couple of weeks' time, you'll have peated casks, small batch. And you'll notice, any of you have bought them, that all of them very deliberately say batch 001 on them. And that's deliberate. I mean, I don't know whether we'll get up to 3 figures on them, but rest assured, ex-bourbon batch 002 is currently vatting. We've currently vatted those casks, so it's the same product. I'm not rewriting my tasting notes for it. It is the same. It's a selection of casks that we've picked out that will have that same profile, same ABV. And yeah, that's effectively our current thoughts, that it's not a core range, but it is it's a selection of ongoing batches. Oloroso cask, I tried to sneak that one out because there wasn't a lot of bottles, and everyone was really upset with me that I did that, because it was a European release. So I didn't tell everyone in the UK. And they're like, why didn't you tell us? And I'm like, because it was for Europe. And they're like, well, we want to know, when's our one? It's coming. That's in about a month's time. So again, you'll start to see small batch repetition. So ex-bourbon batch 2, Oloroso batch 2. And that's the way we're really going to sort of handle some sort of volume. But that is a different, sort of 1,000 to 2,000 bottles is a different kettle of fish than, here is one product. Oh, you've bought it all, no problems. Here's another 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. That is a different thing. What did I see? Christoph was asking if there's plans to double capacity. There is no plans to double capacity. There is an ongoing conversation around Bimber Site B.
Very interesting.
But frankly, COVID has put that back at least a year. So
yeah.
Let's see what happens. But yeah.
I mean, one other question that's just sort of come in is, obviously, the fact that you are selling out very quickly. Are you thinking of looking at your pricing point, or are you still quite happy with the pricing point you're at? Because of, obviously, I think the point is with the flippers and things like that, but it's one of those, you put the price up and it doesn't really matter whether it will still get flipped.
We have had this conversation, and I've got a pretty strong view on this right now, in that, you stick the price, as you say, you stick the price up, and people at the moment are still going to flip it given the returns. But equally, I look at it and think, well, hold on a minute. I know how long Bimber's been releasing products, because I joined them to release their first product. We're up to a year, a year since I joined, and only 9 months since we released our first product, of which 4 or 5 of them has been COVID ridden. Do I really think that it's appropriate to stick up prices within, 4 or 5 months of releasing your first release? And morally, my answer is absolutely not. Do I think it's reasonable to, at the end of the year, the end of this year, look at what you're doing, look at how that's going, and think, well, do we need to look at our pricing structure? Yeah, sure, we'll have a look at it for 2021. But it's just way too soon. So at the moment, no, there is no plans to change those prices.
The other thing I thought you could do, Matt,
go on, mate.
Was you could say something like, you'll sell 10% of your bottles in auction, and that would put off some flippers, but it would mean for some of the elevated prices, you get it directly to you.
Wow. Okay, that's quite interesting. Do you know of anyone ever doing that? I've never heard of a producer actually deliberately flooding the auction market to take the bottom out of it.
Blake's Distillery. Didn't they do that with their first release, which created then a lot of controversy?
Oh, the world's most expensive English whiskey ever in the world ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which distillery, Warren?
Pardon?
Which distillery? Sorry, I didn't catch it.
The Lakes Distillery. Okay. Yeah. So they released their first ever own brand malt whiskey straight into auction. And then did one of them, bottle number 1 went for £1,700 or something, was it?
I think it was way more than that.
No, I think about $7,000.
Was it £7,000? Yeah. But I think that then put their name, it gave them a very bad name in the fact it was shown to be greed rather than anything else, which I think is kind of wrong. But I get where people were coming from, the fact that they just put their initial whiskey straight into auction. But I don't think any distillery going forward is going to stop the flipping if you've got a distillery that is popular.
I think kind of what Jamie suggests is actually a pretty good idea, to be fair. Just sort of, I know we've been chatting about flipping and stuff, and flipping winds me right up. But when it comes to increasing prices to offset that, I mean, my kind of concern is that people like me would get priced out. Because I'm a big Bimber fan. I'm a big fan of a lot of English whiskies, and I have certain budget constraints where I can operate in, and I know what my limit is, and I wouldn't want to kind of have the door shut on me, so to speak, from buying anything.
Exactly. So that's why we are not going to put prices up as a knee-jerk reaction. But no, I think Jamie's idea is unproven and extremely interesting. And it's not because the Lakes, it was this is our first ever bottle, and we want to get the highest amount of money possible. That is a different proposition to every release we're just going to put 100 bottles on auction, have at it. And I don't know how it would go, and I certainly don't know what Darius would think, but that's got my cogs turning, that if you did that, you are fulfilling that part, the people who want to get it from auction, but then you're not forcing people like Andy, who says, you're at the right price point, please don't blow that out the water. And I totally hear you, mate. We're not changing this year at all.
But do we think on that sense that if you put, say you have 300 bottles and 200 come out at £75 and the other 100 go onto auction and sell for £200, the money men behind the distillery are going to say, hang on a minute, we need to put this price up. So there will be a price increase on that sense. And then that goes against the people that are the general buyers, because they're then looking at it and thinking, well, it's now suddenly out of our price bracket.
Yeah, no, and it is all about fairness. I mean, certainly you're probably going to see some sort of message from me on the next release, which is effectively all purchases will be limited to one per person until everyone's got their one per person, and then anything left over will come back round again. It's about trying to let people, who I would say are the fans, have access to it, and access is both price, time, and ability to get hold of a bottle. And that's really, really important to us. And I would say it's why Bimber Appreciation Society and also the club has exploded, because those are the goals of that. It is to get people a bottle into people's hands. Gary, first club bottling. It's really busy this month, mate, because it's coming this month. First club bottling, all bottles numbered, and they will be numbered to your club membership number. Everyone will be offered their membership number bottle on first refusal. So you'll be able to buy that. And then any people who say, I don't want my bottle, then we'll probably ballot off the remaining ones to members who want to. But normally it's one per person, it's your membership number. And within the next month.
A great idea.